Hello everyone. The topic for today is a chapter titled The Ashes That Made Trees Bloom. This is a very interesting story about an honest and hardworking old couple and their pet dog. The story, The Ashes That Made Trees Bloom, is written by William Elliot Griffiths. Before getting into the story, let's know something about the author. The author of this particular chapter is William Elliot Griffiths. He was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the son of a sea captain. He was an American Orientalist, congregational minister, lecturer, and prolific author. His notable works are The Mikado's Empire, Japanese Fairy War, The Lily Among Thorns, etc. The Ashes That Made Trees Bloom is an adapted version of a Japanese story. It depicts that the bond between humans and animals can't be broken even after death. However, there are a few people whose selfish interests blot their relationship. Here, in the story, the old man and his dog shared the warmth, integrity, association of lifetime rather beyond life. Without any further delay, let's begin our story. The Ashes That Made Trees Bloom. In the good old days of the daimyos means wealthy landowners, there lived an old couple whose only pet was a little dog. Having no children, they loved it as though it were a baby. The old dame means sir, made it a cushion of blue crepe. Crepe means a thin fabric. And at mealtime, Miyuko, for that was its name, their dog's name, Miyuko, would sit on it as snug. Snug means comfortable or cozy, as any cat. The kind people fed the pet with tidbits of fish from their own chopsticks and all the boiled rice it wanted. Thus treated, the dumb creature loved its protectors like a being with a soul. This is a Japanese story. In the 19th century Japan, there lived an old couple. Their only companion was a little pet dog named Miyuko. The name of their dog was Miyuko. Having no children, they loved it as if it was their baby. They gave them comfortable cushion and pieces of fish and boiled rice to eat. Miyuko also loved its noble master. Let's move on to the next paragraph. The old man, being a rice farmer, went daily with hoe or spade into the fields. Hoe is a thing which is used for digging. Working hard from morning until O Tendo-sama. O Tendo-sama means morning till sunset. Had gone down behind the hills. Every day the dog followed him to work, never once harming the white heron that walked in the footsteps of the old man to pick up the worms. For the old fellow was patient and kind to everything that had life, and often turned up a sword on purpose to give food to the birds. The word sword means the surface of the ground with the grass growing on it. See the picture, then you can understand easily. In this paragraph, we can understand that the old man was a rice farmer. He worked hard with his spade from morning till sunset. And his dog Miyuko followed him every day to the field. And it did not hurt the white heron bird, which used to kill worms. The farmer was kind to all the living creatures. He was very sweet person. Let's continue our story. One day the dog came running to him, putting his paws against his legs and motioning with his head to some spot behind. The old man at first thought his pet was only playing and didn't mind it. But the dog kept on whining and running to and fro for some minutes. Then the old man followed the dog a few yards to a place where the animal began a lively scratching. Thinking it was possibly a buried bone or bit of fish, the old man struck his hoe in the earth when, lo, a pile of gold gleamed before him. Thus, in an hour, the old couple were made rich. The good souls bought a piece of land, made a feast for their friends, and gave plentifully to their poor neighbors. As for the dog, they pet him till they nearly smother him with kindness. What happened? One day, the dog came running to its master. It motioned him to some place behind. Motion means directed with a movement of the hand or head. Okay. First, he thought his dog was only playing and didn't mind it. But he whined. The dog whined, made a long, high-pitched complaining cry and ran to and fro for some minutes. To and fro is an idiom. It means moving alternately in different directions. Alternating movement in opposite direction. Okay. The old man followed Miko to the place where it began to scratch. Okay. The old man thought it was a buried bone or a bit of fish. Here he used his hoe. That means to dig the earth. He started to dig the earth. Oh my God, he found a lot of gold there. A pile of gold shone before him, gleamed before him. Thus, they became rich in an hour. They bought land, hosted a party to their friends, and gave generously to their poor neighbors. I can understand your curiosity. Let's see what happens next. Now, in the same village, there lived a wicked old man and his wife, not a bit sensitive and kind, who had always kicked and scolded all dogs whenever any passed their house. Hearing of their neighbor's good luck, they coaxed the dog into their garden and set before him bits of fish and other dainties, hoping he would find treasure for them. But the dog, being afraid of the cruel pair, would neither eat nor move. Then they dragged him out of doors, taking a spade and hoe with them. No sooner had the dog got near a pine tree growing in the garden than he began to paw and scratch the ground as if a mighty treasure lay beneath. The other characters are introduced. Now, in the same village, there lived a wicked old man and his wife. They were unkind to all dogs. They had always kicked and scolded all dogs whenever they passed their house. When they heard of their neighbor's good luck, they called and coaxed Miko, coax means persuaded, Miko, to their garden and offered it fish and other dainties. Dainties means tasty dishes. They hoped that Miko would find treasure for them also. But Miko refused to eat any fish. So, what happened? What did they do? They dragged him out of doors. Our poor Miko took them to a pine tree in the garden. The greedy old fool danced with joy. He began to dig the ground. Let's go back to our wicked farmers or a wicked couple's garden. What's happening there? Quick, wife! Hand me the spade and hoe, cried the greedy old fool as he danced with joy. Here the greedy old fool danced with joy and he began to dig because he thought he will get treasure from the underground. Then The covetous old fellow with a spade and the old crone with a hoe began to dig. But there was nothing but a dead kitten, the smell of which made them drop their tools and shut their noses. Furious at the talk, the old man kicked and beat him to death, and the old woman finished the work by nearly chopping off his head with a sharp hoe. They then flung him into the hole and heaped the earth over his carcass. The covetous old fellow. Here the covetous, that means greedy old man with spade and the old crone. Old crone means old woman, his wife. With a hoe they began to dig, but what happened? They found only a dead cat in the pit. The old neighbor became furious at the dog and beat him to death. He chopped off Muko's head with his sharp hoe. Then he threw him into the hole and heaped the earth over his carcass. Carcass means dead body. Here flung means threw. What happened? He killed our Muko and cut off his head, and he threw its dead body into the pit, and they heaped the earth over his carcass, over his dead body. Let's go to our old couple's home. The owner of the dog heard of the death of his pet, and mourning for him as if he had been his own child, went at night under the pine tree. He set up some bamboo tubes in the ground, such as are used before tombs, in which he put fresh flowers. Then he laid a cup of water and a tray of food on the grave, and burned several costly sticks of incense. He mourned a great while over his pet, calling him many dear names, as if he were alive. The poor old couple, the owners of Muko, mourned for their pet. Mourned means they showed sorrow for the death of someone. Okay. They put flowers and water on its tomb. He kept some food and burned many costly sticks of incense. Incense means a smell of a sweet smell, a perfumed smell. He called him many dear names, pet names. Poor fellow. That night, the spirit of the dog appeared to him in a dream and said, "Cut down the pine trees over my grave and make from it a mortar for your rice pastry and a mill for your bean sauce." So the old man chopped down the tree and cut out of the middle of the trunk a section about 2 feet long. With great labor, partly by fire, partly by the chisel, he scraped out a hollow place as big as a small bowl. He then made a long-handled hammer of wood, such as is used for pounding rice. When New Year's time drew near, he wished to make some rice pastry. When the rice was all boiled, Granny put it into the mortar. The old man lifted his hammer to pound the mass into dough, and the blows fell heavy and fast till the pastry was all ready for baking. Suddenly the whole mass turned into a heap of gold coins. When the old woman took the hand mill and filling it with beans began to grind, the gold dropped like rain. That night the spirit of Muko appeared to the old farmer in a dream, and the spirit asked him to cut down the pine tree over its tomb, and the farmer should make a mortar for a rice pastry. Mortar means a bowl, and a mill. Mill means what? The thing what we use to grind grain. Okay. And here the farmer has to make a mortar for a rice pastry and a mill for his bean sauce. Okay. Anyway, he agreed. Soon the old farmer made a hollow place in the tree trunk. He with his wife made a hammer of wood for pounding rice. When New Year's time drew near, he wished to make some pastry. They baked the pastry, and suddenly what happened? The whole mass changed into gold coins. Oh my God. Again they became rich. Okay, I think you are very anxious to know what happens next, right? Okay. Anyway, let's go back to our next paragraphs. Meanwhile, the envious neighbor peeped in at the window when the boiled beans were being ground. "Goody me!" cried the old hag as she saw each dripping of sauce turning into yellow gold, until in a few minutes the tub under the mill was full of a shining mass of gold. So the old couple were rich again. The next day the stingy and wicked neighbor came and borrowed the mortar and magic mill. They filled one with boiled rice and the other with beans. Then the old man began to pound, and the woman to grind. But at the first blow and turn, the pastry and sauce turned into a foul mass of worms. Still more angry at this, they chopped the mill into pieces to use as firewood. Here the jealous neighbor peeped at the window and noticed bean sauce turning into gold. The old couple were rich again. So the neighbors did the same. Then here hag. Hag means ugly old woman. Then stingy. Stingy means ungenerous. Then they did the same. But what happened? Their pastry and sauce turned into worms. They destroyed the mill borrowed from the old couple and burned it. Okay. Let's move on to the next part of the story. Not long after that, the good old man dreamed again, and the spirit of the dog spoke to him, telling him how the wicked people had burned the mill made from the pine tree. "Take the ashes of the mill, sprinkle them on the withered trees, and they will bloom again," said the dog spirit. Okay, here withered means dried up. Okay, the old man awoke and went at once to his wicked neighbor's house, where he found the miserable old pair sitting at the edge of their square fireplace in the middle of the floor, smoking and spinning. Spinning means to rotate. From time to time they warmed their hands and feet with the blaze, with the fire, from some bits of the mill, while behind them lay a pile of the broken pieces. The good old man humbly asked for the ashes. Though the covetous couple turned up their noses at him and scolded him as if he were a thief, they let him fill his basket with the ashes. On coming home, the old man took his wife into the garden. It being winter, their favorite cherry tree was bare. He sprinkled a pinch of ashes on it, and lo! It sprouted blossoms until it became a cloud of pink blooms which perfumed the air. The news of this filled the village, and everyone ran out to see the wonder. The covetous couple also heard the story, and gathering up the remaining ashes of the mill, kept them to make withered trees blossom. So, dear children, in the last part of the part 1, we saw the greedy couple borrowed the mill and mortar to make rice pastry and bean sauce by thinking that they will get gold coins. But unfortunately, they got worms and they burned the mill and mortar. Poor old fellow. And again, the dog appeared to him in a dream. Okay, and he told what? He told him to take the ashes of the mill and spread it on the withered pine trees. He assured him that they would bloom again. The old man brought some ashes of mill. The old man went to the wicked couple's home. The good old man humbly asked for the ashes. The covetous couple scolded him as if he was a thief, and even though they let him fill his basket with the ashes. Okay, He brought some ashes of meal and he spread a pinch of it on the cherry tree. The tree was covered with blossoms. The greedy wicked couple gathered the remaining ashes of the wooden mill. Okay, look at your textbook. The kind old man, hearing that his lord, the daimyo, was to pass along the high road near the village, set out to see him, taking his basket of ashes. As the train approached, he climbed up into an old withered cherry tree that stood by the wayside. Now, in the days of the daimyos, it was the custom when their lord passed by for all the loyal people to shut up their high windows. They even pasted them fast with a slip of paper so as not to commit the impertinence of looking down. Impertinence means rude action. Okay, looking down on his lordship. All the people along the road would fall upon their hands and knees and remain prostrate until the procession passed by. The train drew near. One tall, competent man marched ahead, crying out to the people by the way, "Get down on your knees, get down on your knees." And everyone kneeled down while the procession was passing. Suddenly, the leader of the van caught sight of the aged man up in the tree. He was about to call out to him in an angry tone, but seeing he was such an old fellow, he pretended not to notice him and passed him by. So, when the daimyo's palanquin drew near, the old man, taking a pinch of ashes from his basket, scattered it over the tree. In a moment, it burst into blossom. The delighted daimyo ordered the train to be stopped and got out to see the wonder. Calling the old man to him, he thanked him and ordered presents of silk robes, sponge cake, fans, and other rewards to be given him. He even invited him to his castle. So the old man went gleefully home to share his joy with his dear old wife. Gleefully means gladly. Okay. Let's see what he is going to do with the ashes. Okay. Then one day the wealthy landlord of the village was to pass by that road. According to the custom, all the people had to shut up their high windows. Nobody was allowed to look down on lordship. They also knelt upon their hands and knees until the procession passed by. A tall man marched ahead asking the people to get down on their knees. But the good old man didn't kneel down. Instead of it, he scattered a bit of ashes over the withered cherry tree. Suddenly, it burst into blossom. The landlord got out to see the wonder. He thanked the old man and offered him presents and invited him to the castle. The old man gladly went home to share his joy with his dear wife. But finally, what happened? But when the greedy neighbor heard of it, he took some of the magic ashes and went out on the highway. There he waited until a daimyo's train came along and, instead of kneeling down like the crowd, he climbed a withered cherry tree. When the daimyo himself was almost directly under him, he threw a handful of ashes over the tree, which didn't change a particle. The wind blew the fine dust in the noses and eyes of the daimyo and his wife. Such sneezing and choking, it spoiled all the pomp and dignity of the procession. Pomp means a show of magnificence. The man whose business it was to cry, "Get down on your knees," seized the old fool by the collar, dragged him from the tree, and tumbled him and his ash basket into the ditch by the road. Then, beating him soundly, he left him for dead. Thus, the wicked old man died in the mud, but the kind friend of the dog dwelt in peace and plenty, and both he and his wife lived to a green old age. Okay, dwelt means lived. As usual, the greedy neighbor heard of it. He also took the magic ashes to the highway. He waited until the landlord's train came along, and instead of kneeling down like the crowd, he climbed a withered cherry tree. When the landlord was directly under him, he threw a handful of ashes over him, but the tree showed no change. The dust rather blew into the nose and eyes of his lordship, or of Daimyo and his wife. The man who was escorting the lord dragged the greedy man from the tree and threw him into the ditch. He also beat him soundly. The greedy man thus died in the mud. The kind owner of Miko lived happily to a green old age. My dear children, did you enjoy the story? What is the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that the result obtained of any action depends on our good or bad works which were done by us in the past. So, we should not be greedy. Okay? I hope you have enjoyed the story. Read your story and enjoy yourself. Thank you.